We are back at the table of the Uncommon Cast, and we are so glad that you have joined us. We're especially glad that you have joined us, and we're excited about today's content.
So just to remind everybody, because even we forget, you just have to keep saying it over and over again. This year, we've been focusing kind of on this theme of oneness, wholeness, harmony, unity, whatever those terms, wherever they combine for you, that's what we've been talking about. And we wanted to focus on 3 areas. So wholeness or oneness with God, oneness with others, and oneness with ourselves. And so as we chose guests to come on the podcast, we wanted to pick people that kind of were going to speak to one of those areas. And so immediately as we were talking about this, I texted my friend Meghan. This is Meghan, everybody.
Hello.
Because she has been doing some really great things that are tools that will help us find that kind of oneness with ourselves in a way. And obviously there's a lot of different things that can mean. And so I'm going to let her kind of introduce you to what it is that she does. So Meghan, take it away.
Oh, well, thank you guys for having me. I am a Breath Work Facilitator. So what that means is I facilitate breath work.
Wow.
Who would have thought? So breath work is an active meditation. It's physical and mental and emotional. And I add spiritual to that as well. And instead of when you do a traditional meditation and there's a lot of mind chatter happening when you're doing it, breath work pulls you out of that. So you're really putting awareness around how you're breathing and moving energy through your body with your breath. And that can help with a myriad of things. Sleep, anxiety. It can help kids with sensory issues. There's great children's breathing techniques. I have a child with sensory things, so they work really well. There's been big studies with depression. So just there's a huge gamut of what it can support and help. So
now, so this is new, and I know probably for so many of my friends, so many of our watchers, like there are certain things we just never think about. You don't have to put any work into. Your heart beating, blinking, breathing is one of them, right? So hearing about putting conscious work into breathing in the area of meditation or facilitation of breathing is honestly a new concept for me as well. And so how did you find yourself entering into the space?
Well, I think I've always kind of meandered around like just the wellness world in general for years now. I look back and it's been, I was in my 20s and it's been a while, we'll say. And so I've always kind of been on that journey. I remember doing yoga back when I lived in San Francisco, and that was mid-20s. And breath is part of there's an 8-fold path with yoga. I believe that's what it's called. And that's one of the limbs. Like you have to learn, that's what it's believed to get closer to your essence, closer to God, closer to spirit. And it's one of their paths to deepen yoga poses. I think in the Western land, we do yoga for exercise. We think very, there's less awareness around it. So for me, I honestly don't know. I stumbled upon it a couple years ago. It was on Instagram. I don't know if I should say yay or apologize that's where I found it. You had a
life-changing moment because of Instagram.
I was following whatever I was following, and I
go down some weird rabbit trails, and suddenly
you really can.
How did I end up here?
And it's like, I'm going to sign up for this course. I mean, that's kind of how it happened. And I bought this man's book for whatever reason. Truly, it was like a thing. I just thought, oh, this sounds great. And I would listen to his book, and it was called The Reluctant Healer, not meaning that he was the healer, meaning that we're the healers, and we are a huge part in our own healing, but there's not much awareness around that. So I loved how he spoke to that, and he speaks to breath work with you have spirit when you go into different levels of it. So there's breathwork techniques, which there's hundreds and hundreds of them. And those can be done for a few minutes a day and incredibly beneficial, let's say, and things you can do with your kids, yourself, to calm your anxiety really quickly. Then he discussed breathwork healing, which sounds like, but it is about you being the healer of your own body. And it's a more extended amount of time. Dawn experienced one of those classes. And it's really meant to get in and move that energy. When you tap into your breath, like I said, it takes you out of your mind and you get a lot of physical sensations. Oftentimes you can feel your old injuries appear. He talks a lot about trauma in the body, and people have healed a lot of old traumas. And I'm not by any means a trauma expert, so I don't want to say that I am. But it's just been it's been like an invaluable tool for him to help people with cancer. And people come to him with the last minute of, well, you're the final thing. I've heard about you.
I'm out of options.
options. So I was really intrigued by his take, which was really the only take I had technically at the time. And I just thought, I want to do this. I had taught bar for 5 years, and when I stopped for multiple reasons, what I missed was the connection to clients. I really missed feeling like I had been of service during class. And a lot of that had to do with talking to people after or talking before. And, they felt better for whatever reason they felt. Like they came in feeling like poop and left like just having moved their energy. So I felt very called to do it. And I said to my husband, I'm like, so I want to found this breathwork guy and I want to sign up and I want to do this. And he was like, okay, whatever.
Let's give everyone a picture of Mike.
Right.
With a beard that's like a third person.
Oh my gosh. At the time it was
Mike.
not like that. This COVID. This is COVID.
And
beard.
you said, I just want to go breathe with a guy. And his response was,
okay.
All right.
But it was COVID too, so it's been on Zoom.
All right. So you're breathing virtually with a mask.
We've been virtual for the whole time because I started last summer, I guess, was my first training with him. Mm-hmm. Yeah, spring. It was spring. It was about a year ago. But I just felt very, very called. And I just really felt that connection to spirit and body and the healing aspect of it. And I think that we don't know how powerful we are. And I think I've learned that over the years more and more, how we are capable of so much, but we don't know that.
So we know something about you at this table that maybe not everybody that's listening knows, which is that you are a Jesus follower. Mm-hmm. And a lot of the words that you have said right now sound very like woo-woo-ish and new agey and like, oh, if I am anywhere in the sphere of following Jesus, that is I don't know how I feel about energy movement and breathing.
I don't know about healing myself. God the healer.
Right. Yeah. So tell us a little bit about that journey for you. Like, how did your faith intersect with what you're doing?
Well, what you just said about God being the healer, I'm not saying like we can all go out and be like, hey, I broke my, whatever. Sure. But when I look at other ways it is taught, and I understand the woo-woo aspect of it, and you can definitely go that route with it. It's very easy to do. I think you can do that with a lot of things now. But I have a ton of faith, and I always have, and I don't feel a disconnect there. I feel like I understand when people can see a disconnect there, but like for instance, I grew up in the Catholic Church, which I've mentioned before, and I remember sitting there as a child counting hats because I was bored. And we all dressed in the Catholic Church because that was the deal. And I remember what I grew up in was hearing it was not the happiest side of the loving God that I associate my life with. It was like, smack down. I know you can't see me.
The corrective.
Listeners.
She's clapping for those of you that aren't clear.
It was just very like, this is how you're, it's just a lot. As
punitive.
Yeah. Thank you. And I remember sitting there at a very young age thinking, no, this is not how it is. And maybe I shouldn't say that, but no, Jesus is not that, and I've always had that view. And I remember growing and thinking and hearing people argue about religion. And I've always had a lot of very faith-filled friends, and who were faith-filled and said they had the same beliefs, but clearly don't have the same beliefs as well. And the arguments and going on and on about it. And I always thought it was made a lot harder. Does that make sense? Am I making sense?
Mm-hmm.
I feel like, and I remember saying that once at an adult group, and it did not go over well.
With church people?
Yeah.
What,
and I was
that's shocking.
Okay, wait. I love this.
Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yes,
Am I making sense?
like,
I'm sorry. I feel like I'm trying to answer.
To recap, you said you feel like as people, we tend to make this faith thing a lot harder than it needs to be.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
I would wholeheartedly agree.
Yes.
That's good.
It's one of like the reasons why we do what we do.
Exactly.
It's kind of like to peel back, right? These layers that
and
have been
but
obstacles
it's
for
hard
people.
to say that though. And I don't say that. I mean, I said it. I remember saying it very clearly in my mind, and it did not go. And I said it with love, and I meant it with love and like true conviction, but it was like, no, one of those like.
If it's worth anything, it's got to cost and be difficult.
Right. And so I feel when it comes to breath work, I'm like, you'll feel it. You'll feel it. You'll tap into what you need to tap into, and you'll tap into, it can definitely bring your energy up depending on what you're doing. It's great for sleep and all those things. When you go deeper into it, I find if you feel that is your spirit, that's your spirit. It's your knowing. It's your essence. Do I sound too woo-woo? I'm not trying to sound woo-woo at all.
I love it. You were going to say something.
You be you. You just say what you're going to say.
I think oftentimes when we try to communicate who the creator is, who God is, and we're trying to communicate that to another listener about who God could be for them, what life is, what is the spirit of life. We are searching for language all the time, right?
Yeah.
The most contentious group will always be the religious that come back at you and attack the words that you try to explain God about. Mm-hmm. But I think if there is a God, which I strongly believe there is, it's why we do Uncommon Good, that God winks and smiles when we try to communicate the closeness of who he is for all of us, right?
Yes.
And I think he winks and smiles and encourages us when we get creative with those words to not use words that someone else gave us, but words that we're feeling about the very breath of God that we feel and want for others.
Yeah.
So no, I applaud the creativity and the searching for words to say it in a way that's personal and intimate about who God is for you, that you want for others, that what breath work can do for others and how God designed us for that, for others. And it's just sad that I think the God who is known as the creator, so therefore the most creative, that put the fingerprint of creativity into all of humanity, whether we believe in him or not. It's the religious that come down on those that are trying to be creative about communicating who the creator is.
Yeah.
Right? So no, we are your audience about creative language, trying to connect people with God.
I was thinking I have someone just reached out to me last night via a text, a friend of mine, about a different person, but it reminded me of this person. And I remember about 5 or 6 years ago, and he's a very, like, he will tell you, he's a very strong Christian and he knows the Bible back and forth, and he could tell me all the things. And I remember having a conversation with him, and he said, I was arguing about something, and he said, I was saying, God loves everyone, and I don't think that I'm not going to debate you on that, basically is what I said. I'm not afraid to say that. And he said, if you don't believe in every word that is in the Bible, then you are not a Christian. And I, had never heard it expressed to me in that way. And I had never heard it expressed to me in such an, I guess aggressive is a good word, but it was just very, I mean, he really strongly felt this. And I was like, well, I love Jesus. That was my response to him. He did not like that response. But it really upset me that he said that. It really shook me, like, to the core, that I think about it often in my life. And this was 5 or 6 years ago. And like not a year, because it was COVID. I don't even know what time is happening right now.
What is time?
And Finn asked me if we were Christian. I was driving him to church, and he said,
Finn is your son.
Finn is my son. He's 11. And I love going to church. Like, I love it. Love it. Love small group. Love all the things. And he said, are we Christian? And I was like I really sat there because I had been complaining and sounding probably not very Christian to what people would say to me. But I was like, well, and I stopped myself and I said, I love Jesus. And do you love Jesus? You know all about Jesus. And he's like, yes, I do. I said, I know what you're talking. I knew why he was asking. And I said, I feel, me personally, because I'm trying not to put anything out there on them, that my kids, that I don't want to influence, but that's hard because you're a parent. But I was saying, I think that there's a lot of, we can cut things out, right?
Yeah, totally.
I was just going to say, like, I said to him, Christians give Christians a bad name. Christianity, that is what I said. We probably should get that out, though.
No, it's fine. No.
And then I had to really explain all of what I meant. And then it became this huge conversation. But anyway, I don't know why I got off on that tangent about this person that said that to me.
One, I mean, did the man that said that have tendrils and a long beard? Like, was he wearing different fabrics? And because what I love about people that say things like that is, like, you are right now contradicting the very soapbox that you are trying to preach to me from.
By the way, Dawn wasn't just trying to characterize a rabbi.
No.
No. She was trying to characterize the contradictions, like in the book of Leviticus, that we don't follow. So
There's
just
all
to make sure that she wasn't drawing a caricature of a rabbi.
Thank you. There's my point. My point is, and I have actually that conversation with people all the time. When people say, just believe the Bible, or some version of that.
Yeah, sure.
They often are only talking about the parts of the Bible that they actually want to believe in. Right? And so in their accusation to you, I mean, they are betraying themselves. You know what I mean? Because they don't 100%. Do all of the things.
Yeah.
Which is absolutely why Christians give Christianity a bad name, and why I had a very similar conversation with Ruby, my daughter, maybe like a year ago, who from the back seat goes, "Mom, are we Christian?"
Yeah.
And I was like, well, because I immediately.
And you're a pastor.
I'm a pastor, so I was like, shame.
I feel so much better now, you guys.
All of this worry.
I feel like I just went to years of therapy.
I know. And
welcome.
My initial thought was like, God, don't ever tell your grandma that you asked me that question.
Oh gosh, how funny.
What I said was something very similar. I was like, well, being a Christian just means that you followed and loved Jesus. Do you follow and love Jesus? And she said, yes. And I said, that's what being a Christian means.
Yeah.
And in the same way, right, we could make it very complicated, or we could keep it pretty simple and straightforward.
Yeah.
Which I think is actually like way more helpful for people.
Yeah. And as you're talking, as we're talking about this, like, I love thinking of the analogy of faith as like taking breaths, you know, this true relationship that you have with God. It can be as easy as just walking around and breathing. And I love thinking about that kind of like imagery for our faith.
Yeah.
So that's what's drawing it up.
Yeah.
Okay. So on that, because I have another question, and then I want to lead into some of Ryan's thoughts on this. We talked about, after I did a breathwork facilitation with you, how, yes, breathing is something that we don't necessarily think about, but how most of us are actually like doing ourselves a huge disservice because we don't actually breathe.
Right. And we hold our breath a lot.
Yeah. So will you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. I mean, even the joke in classes at Forward, when we would do bar classes for years, they'd say, don't hold your breath. And you're like, I was holding my breath, you know? And
because anytime things get hard, your initial instinct is to like,
it's just a normal physical reaction. Yeah. Is for you to go and hold your breath, or any surprise. Like, it's just really across the board. It happens all the time. And people, like I think I mentioned, breathe very shallowly in general as well. I've worked with people who, when I say breathe in for 5, they can't breathe in for 5 counts. It's too much air. They're like, you know, they're going through their days with this very shortened breath. They have a lot of stress. It affects everything in their life.
It quickens their heart rate. It shortens their breath.
You're putting extra pressure on your organs, you know, from top to bottom. I mean, there's so much science around it now too, to be honest, with the breath. If you, I need to show you guys that book. I will bring it to you. But there's so many studies around it. If there was a Netflix, that was woo-woo a little bit. The Netflix Heal.
Oh, yeah. I did see that.
It's super interesting. It's on Netflix. Did you see it? Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's super interesting. But there is a lot of work around the breath and how it affects the body. And I just read an article about, there's a gentleman doing breath work in dementia centers because they can do breath work. You know, they may not remember, but it's helping with their sleep and just, you know, a whole bunch of things.
So I love the parallel of like our faith is breath and how often we don't breathe right in our daily lives. And I want to tee that up for you on some of these thoughts.
Well, it's fun to get geeky about breath and even do a word search in scripture, in the Bible, for breath and all the ways that interplays. From the very beginning of creation, that it was God's breath that brought life, brought something out of nothing, right? That it was God's breath into humanity that in Genesis you read, it was God's breath in humanity that brought life and awareness. There's this cool imagery. When Moses encounters God in the burning bush and all of a sudden he hears this voice. And this is God. And God's telling him, go back to Pharaoh, release the people. And Moses is like, who am I to do that? What's your name? Just tell me your name, God. And God says these letters, Yod, He, Vav, He, and which we say as Yahweh, we add vowels to pronounce it. But there's rabbinic teaching that was the very sound of breath. So when God says, we read it as I am, tell him I am sent you, I am who I am. But that it was the God of breath, the God of breathing that breathed life into creation, that breathed life in humanity. When you start to look for breath, and even the word spirit, pneuma, is breath and wind, that you can't miss it in scripture, right? About how God is so breath, tied into breathing.
So in both Greek and Hebrew, the same word applies for right? Like we don't think about this because we tend to know only one language. So usually we know English. So oftentimes we don't understand, or it escapes our awareness that like words tend to have a range of meaning, right? So words are very seldom like straightforward one thing. Oftentimes they can mean like the word to bear something, right, can mean like to carry it or to like bear it as a burden, like symbolically, right? There's like a range of meaning that and nuance in language that we understand. But when we read the Bible that has been translated from a language, the people who translated it had to make decisions about what word to put in there. And so we miss out sometimes on the fact that these words that were translated to say spirit or breath or life actually have this range of meaning, just like we do in English. Yeah. So in both Hebrew and Greek, right? Hebrew, it's ruach, right? The idea that breath and spirit, like those words are kind of mingled together. Mm-hmm. And same in Greek, pneuma, you have life and breath and spirit, all wind, all commingled into this one word. And we tend to miss out on that kind of geeky, cool Bible thing because we read it as spirit.
Right.
Right? So, but anytime really you read the word spirit in the Bible, you could easily read the word breath, the breath of God instead of the spirit of God.
Yeah.
Wow.
So
I just had read something very similar, actually, and so similar to that. And they were talking about how Russian Orthodox monks hundreds of years ago, they have history of them doing breath work, and they have talk about the breath, and they said they still use it with Russian special forces. It's the same, which I found fascinating.
Wow.
That's so neat.
And
like monks and Buddha. I mean, everyone, it was just talking how it's really very expansive, and we kind of in the West aren't tapped in, to be honest. We tap in as well as we should.
We love to define things. Mm-hmm. We love to have rigid edges to say, do you believe in every word? Because it's more mysterious when you read the Bible, say, do you believe in the meaning of this phrase rather than believe in every word, which is English, and it's different in Spanish, and it's different in Greek and different in Hebrew. So back to that guy, is what we believe in as we read Scripture is the meaning that points to the God behind Scripture. Mm-hmm. It's not the words that we worship, right? It's the God behind it.
Yes,
and
I agree.
It is the God of breath.
You should have a podcast.
Yeah, we should.
You guys should have a show. Anyway, go on. Right.
The God of breath and life. Breath and life is intertwined throughout Scripture. Right. And so this makes me think, I told you this earlier, but I want to say it on the podcast, that I have a dear friend, Jenny. I'll send this to you so you hear it and see it. And been praying for her for years as she has battled against chronic migraines that have been so debilitating that have put her in her bed for so much of life. Pain level 10, migraines beyond migraines. And she recently had gone to a clinic that helped her in a huge way after so many different medications, so many different doctors. I mean, it's been years and years and years and years of trying. And as she reported on it, and this is like, I get to follow her through social media and we send messages back and forth, but it was actually breathing that got her to a new state of living with chronic migraines. Yeah. And her thanks to God was about learning how to breathe for the very first time in her 40s. Mm-hmm. Now, I was like, I remember reading that, Jenny, and going, I don't know how to breathe. And she said something about shallow breathing, just like you said. And she said something about breathing from her feet and then her stomach. And I'm like, I am clueless about breathing to my fullest capacity and what that could mean for me.
One of my favorite phrases is where attention goes, energy flows. So I imagine when she's breathing, and I would love to hear what she says about this, is that when she's breathing in, she's mentally pressing the air down, visually pressing it down into her feet and bringing it back up. because when you put awareness around your breath, it's amazing. So you guys need to go home, do this later. But when you sit quietly and you really focus your attention on your breath and you send it to parts of your body maybe that need that healing, like her migraines, and she learned to breathe through her feet. This is my guess, is that she pressed it down into her feet. Like, so you're just full body breathing. You're sending that energy, that awareness, that you're filling everything up.
So this is the woo-woo
with
part,
your breath.
right? Because anatomy physiology over here says you don't breathe in your feet, right?
Mm-hmm.
You've got lungs, which are
Right.
here, thoracic cavity, right? And
Right.
so there is...
Do you want to borrow my glasses?
Don mocks me that I'm a scientist all the time.
Thoracic
But
cavity.
then, okay. But really, that's where it does sound woo-woo.
Yeah,
at times. So can you
sure,
explain
sure,
that when
sure.
you're breathing
No, it
beyond
does-
your
it-
anatomical
It
limits?
does sound woo-woo. It does. And the answer to that is what science talks about. Scientists who are working on it, like the Heart Math Institute. I don't know if you've heard of that. They do a lot of studies with the heart and how our energetic field of our heart they've measured is 18 feet out in front of us. And they've measured that scientifically. Look it up. It's so fascinating, right? So you know how when you walk into a room, you can feel.
Mhm.
Sometimes you can feel who's in the
Mhm.
room before you know that they're in the room, right?
Is that true for
Someone's
you guys? You're
energy?
looking at me skeptically. Do you feel that? Because I totally like.
I think, okay.
Yes.
So I
anyways-
begin to hear things of aura, and I begin to hear things like that. And
No,
like I
okay,
get
no,
it,
but
there's
so,
a vibe,
but we are
there's an
so,
energy that
they would
she
say,
says, but I don't know.
scientifically,
I don't know.
they
I'm
would
just being
say,
honest, I don't know.
we are atoms and cells. This is what they would say scientifically to
Yes.
this. We're atoms and cells. We are made up of energy. We have
Just
an
energy balls.
energetic
Yeah.
body as well as our spiritual
body,
body,
right.
a physical
Mhm.
body, and our emotional body. And they all make us up. That would be the short answer.
Okay, but because
Yeah,
let me
yeah.
ask this: haven't you ever been sitting next to somebody and you can like feel whatever they're radiating? Like maybe
Mhm.
they're super angry or they're super excited, and like I can feel that energy coming off of them. In the same way that I remember used to, like when we used to think about having hard conversations with people, I would imagine the energies of those people in the room that were going to make the optimal equation to have this hard conversation, you know, just because like people's energies are
And knowing how you could work through that
Yes.
conversation.
right.
Yeah, I hear all that. Yeah.
That's so funny.
I
I get
love
that
your face.
conceptually.
Well-
I don't know.
I love your face.
Yeah.
He's like,
I get it conceptually. I've never perceived it, and maybe you're more empathetic than you think because you always talk about how you're not empathetic.
oh, you are.
But I get that conceptually, but yeah, I've never really experienced it, so I can't really relate.
Yeah.
But
Anyway.
I'm interested in it.
Yeah.
I mean,
That would be the short answer, though, is that it's an energetic,
Yeah, and I get that. We are organized packets of
Yeah.
energy bouncing off of each other all the time. And you do feel someone's vibe and their energy as they come in and impact
I feel it
others.
so often and have since I was so young that it was, and I see it in my kids, one more than the other, really takes in people's energy to the point and I just now, 40 something, older than everyone here. I just now really have learned how to harness that a little bit. And I still struggle with that because it can be very overwhelming to have when I was teaching, it was when I most felt it. And I had to learn to, okay, this isn't about me. They came from work. They're there. She's had a bad day. And I would have to kind of shut it out to get through just an exercise class, if that makes sense, to get through.
Well, and I think you
it's
can think
hard.
of people like, what's our dear friend Ken? What is one of his primary ways that he hires people? Do they lift your spirit when they walk in the
Oh,
room?
so good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That I resonate with that idea so
Yeah.
deeply because my body physically
Surround
responds
yourself.
to people. Like,
Totally.
yes,
Yeah.
my spirit gets like I respond to people differently. Anyways.
Yeah, see, that's always felt more emotional than physical for me. And maybe it is physical and I'm just perceiving it as emotion.
Mm-hmm.
It's always been more like I get bad vibes from people, or like like
but that's what I would say too. It's a bad vibe.
They're kind of like a negative person to be around. And I perceive that as being like my interactions with them more so than like their presence. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I kind of get it. Semantics, I suppose.
There's a song that I was geeking out on as we knew we were going to talk about breath, and I was so curious. I'm like, where are we going to go? I'm so excited for me to tell us about what she's been doing with breath work and facilitating.
Tell us how she's
breath.
been breathing.
But for a long time, and I don't know, like, do you guys remember, like, we were all Numa fans with Rob Bell.
Huge Numa fans.
Huge Numa fans. I still am. I think they were great.
I still think they're good.
If anyone
Yeah.
dislikes
Come at
me
me,
because
bro.
of that, you're not my people. You're not my audience. But
That was before he was labeled a heretic anyway.
exactly.
So,
So he
Poor
did
Rob.
a great one on breath and breathing. And and that's what sparked me and awakened me to it. But there's a song that came out years ago called The Sound of Breathing. And it's by a guy, Jason Gray. And I hadn't listened to it in years until we started talking about doing this. So this afternoon, I was like looking it up. I'm like, that was the song I heard. And it has these awesome lyrics because breathing is deeply spiritual. From a God of breath and a God of life and spirit and air and wind. It's deeply spiritual. But it says, here are the ending lyrics of this song. And especially you need to check the song out later. But it says, in him we live and move and have our being. We speak the name as long as we are breathing. So whether we believe or not, we speak the name of the one who gave us breath and has the name that sounds like breath. So breathe in and breathe out. Doubters and deceivers, skeptics and believers. We speak it just the same. From birth to death, every single breath is a whispering of your name. And that's so
It gives
cool.
me
That's so
tingles.
good.
That's good.
Yeah.
And I think so many times we are not awake to the God that is around us, who says, even if you don't believe in me, I believe in you and I am as close as your breath.
Yeah.
And there's even stories, that sparks me about Old Testament. There's even stories about God showing up and they feel the very breath of God, right?
Yeah.
Not in fire, not in earthquake, not in that, but just the whisper, closeness of breath of God to say, I'm for you, I'm with you, I believe in you. And so as people are hearing about breathing, where does one start? To hear this, where would one start to learn more about breath work?
Well, there are a lot of really good books out there actually right now. And Breath is a great book. It's currently, I think it's on the New York Times bestseller right now.
It's a very fitting title. Who's that?
Right?
Who's that
And
by?
it's a gentleman, I can't think of his name right now. And I can send this all to you
We'll
later
link
if you
it
want
for
to post
everybody.
it. Yeah, you
Yeah,
can
our
link them
stuff.
all. There's a lot of really interesting books. There's a lot of different books about technique. There's a lot of people out in the world doing breath work on Instagram. You can probably find a breath work practice to do every day with someone live, depending on what you look up. With me, you can contact me, and I'm working with people. I've been doing groups on Zoom, which is really nice, and I think makes people feel more comfortable because they're at home and, they don't feel strange and plus COVID, limits us as well.
Breathing heavily on people is frowned upon.
Yeah. A little bit. That's funny. So, yeah.
Okay, before we
What were you
go,
gonna say?
would you give, even at the end of this podcast, just you don't have to walk us through, but like I have you do sometimes on
Give you a
Instagram.
couple breath ideas I can do.
Yeah, give a breath idea that people can just practice even after they're done listening to this podcast in their car or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the nice thing about breathwork too, is you can do it. It's kind of something you take with you everywhere you go. I often do it in my car when I'm running children places and truly just finding awareness around your breath. The most optimal breath for the body, this is interesting, is a 5 beat or breath per minute, they say. So inhaling for 5, exhaling for 5. A lot of people struggle with doing that. So you could start at 4. You could start at 3 inhales, drop, exhale for 3, and then build up. That's a great one to do. I love the 4x4 block, which is Navy SEAL box breathing. And everyone's like, that's a Navy SEAL breath. I'm like, yeah. Yeah, it's a good one. And that's really good for energizing yourself. They're all really good for pulling you just into self, which connects you to yourself and relaxing you and just neutralizing your heart rate, really. So if you're anxious, if you're having a stressful moment, if your child's having a meltdown, you know, any awareness around your breath is very helpful. But the Navy SEAL is box breathing in for 4, holding it for 4, exhaling out for 4, and holding it out for 4 on the bottom. And you do that like 5 or 6 times and just see and notice your body and how you feel. Just creates an awareness around your breath and what you're doing. And
yeah, that's great. Well,
Cool.
thank you so much for this. This was such a fun conversation.
Thank you guys. It was fun.
Yeah.
And we will connect people to you because I think one thing it is very, just even hearing it and knowing the books that are out there and all of it, it is very woo-woo, right? And so for
it's something
anyone,
you need to do.
anyone that's concerned though, that like, oh, I would enter that, but it's satanic. Right? We'll link them with you who we know is not satanic or demonic. And so
thank you. I'll put everything away.
There is a way.
Put that on your resume.
Right? I'm not satanic or demonic. There is a way to have this foster your faith.
That's right.
To build your closeness with God. To build your oneness with God, with others, and with self.
Yeah.
And we don't need to fear that because God looks at every one of us and says, you're pretty good. I gave my life for you. In fact, I made you and you're fearfully and wonderfully made. So thank you for reminding us. Thank you for spending this time with us. Thank you for making me really conscious of my breathing during this whole 30 minutes.
I've been actually like doing 5 breaths.
You're about to have your second, your third?
Third.
You're going to need to be breathing awareness.
Before we wrap things up with Meghan.
Wait.
Oh, what?
Do we want to ask the question that we forgot to ask?
So we decided like partway through our series that we were going to ask all of our guests a question. So
it's true. We're going to do it every time, but we haven't done it yet.
Yeah. So we're going to start now with you. Meghan, tell us what is one thing that makes you feel like you belong somewhere?
That's a hard question, you guys. I think when I feel like I'm being, and I don't want to sound like whatever, when I'm being of service to others deeply, and that can be in any form, I feel very in a loving space and connected, and I feel it reciprocal. It's like a circle, giving it out and coming back. That is where I like to sit.
I like that. That was a great answer.
Was it?
Awesome.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm glad. So we want to remind all of you before we go that you are loved.
You are valued.
And you belong.
Bye, y'all. Thank you so much.
Bye. Thank you.
That was so good. And we didn't even get to talk about God is,
I'm like, did I talk about that much?
We did touch on it, but like that God is out there and active and working in places that we don't expect to find. But you did talk about that a little bit.
Yeah.
Oh, not enough though. That's so good.
That is good.